you open the encyclopedia, you can't look up Parthenos, and where it says virgin birth motif that predates the Christian era by thousands of years. They just don't have it in there. They use these scholarly terms that go over your heads. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
So, okay. So Dionysus, turning water into wine, easy. What it's in Diodorus Siculus. December 25th, no question about it. Macrobius states that. Now, Macrobius is 4th century of the Common Era.
Right.
However, we have Dionysus tradition being born on the 6th or 7th, was it the 5th or the 6th? 5th or 6th of January, and there is very much good reason to believe that was, that certainly was before Macrobius moves it to the winter solstice, that this, in one calendar or another, this time, the 5th and the 6th, were also the winter solstice. So the effect is the same.
Right. Exactly. And there's also a Christian religion in existence now that uses the January 6th as the celebration of today. Right. Yeah.
The Orthodox and the I think it was the Armenian, they believe that Christ was born on the 6th of January, which also was the birth of Ion in also December 25th was too. The effect is the same. It's the winter solstice. It's the sun. It's the birth of the sun god. So again, there's all these intimations of Christ being a sun god, having to do with. There's so many different. A lot of my work has to do with that. I have this entire book, Jesus as a Sun Throughout History. Actually, it's not a book yet, but they have an e-book written on that. Let's see, King of Kings, God's only begotten Son, Protogonos would be which is kind of the firstborn, really. Dionysus called the firstborn. Alpha and Omega, ancient inscription apparently. The research I found on that was in French. If you didn't know French, you probably wouldn't be able to find it. Let's see, death and resurrection, that's easy. That's a no-brainer. How anyone could not find Dionysus being described as dying and resurrecting is they haven't studied for even 5 minutes.
One thing I wanted to bring up, actually, that if you don't mind me interrupting you, you had mentioned in your book that many of these gods that we all know are fiction, at least all the ones up until Jesus, they were at one point in time, most of them were considered to be real people at a certain point in history, and Jesus seems to follow the same pattern. There's a term for that, I believe, isn't there? Where they... Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a term called, for pronunciation's sake, I call it evemerism.
That's right.
From this philosopher from the 4th century BC named Euhemerus. No, you can't pronounce that name. So Euhemerus is the same mechanism by which evangelism is, because it's an EU sound, and in modern Greek it's pronounced Ev or Eve, and so Euhemerism is the word. It actually was posited that these guys were kings and queens, that the gods and the goddesses were kings and queens of old, that they had been changed into gods and goddesses, that their legends had been added to all these great supernatural events and fairy tales and so forth, had been added to their stories, and they turned them into gods and goddesses. Now, that has happened on occasion. I think it's Imhotep in Egypt was a physician. And this is about as close as I've ever found to this phenomenon really happening. Right. This physician was turned into the god of medicine, but other than that, other than a very few instances, evemerism does not hold any water. It concerns, like, say, Hercules. Sure, there were people called Hercules. Apparently, there were like 44 Herculi at one point. This was recorded by Varro. Also a pre-Common Era writer. And so, it's just like all the Jesuses in Josephus. There's something like 20 of them.
Sure.
Which one are you pointing to there? So there's no, when you look at the myth itself of Hercules, you can't say, well, that was a real person. It's ridiculous.
Well, the same with Buddha and Krishna, as you pointed out, were once considered real people as well. The reason I bring it up is because I think in time, the Christ character will probably fall into that category. It's where we are at this point.
Well, it'll be the opposite category, actually. There's already the evemerism. It'll fall into the same category as Hercules. He will.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well,
Hercules now. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying the people back then, like 2,500 years ago, were thinking that Hercules was a real person. Oh, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh, yeah. In fact, you could get killed for exclaiming that Hercules is a myth.
I think we can get killed for saying Jesus didn't exist either, unfortunately.
Exactly.
But I thought that's the pattern I was pointing out.
Oh, that's exactly the same. Yeah, the evimerism is an important one too, because a lot of people still think that. Oh, I think there was some guy there underneath all those mythological layers. So I can tell you, there's no core to the onion. Once it's peeled, you can keep going, but there's nothing there.
Right.
Hercules, 2,500 years ago, if you said Hercules was a myth, as we say today, absolutely, Hercules is a myth.
Yeah.
You could be killed. Yeah, no, they were for sure he was a real person, and those exploits took place. I've been to the places where Hercules supposedly does. Some of them, Lerna, for example, where he supposedly killed the Hydra. They have temples built there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great
parallelism. The parallelism. It's like history just keeps repeating itself. Well, we're running out of time. Let's jump into Mithra for the last 5 minutes.
Right. Okay. Born of a Virgin. I have some lovely research on that in this Zeitgeist Challenge ebook that I just created. It's just absolutely beautiful. First of all, in order to get away with this fraud about primary sources, again, we hear this nonsense that there was nothing written down. They say nothing was written down about Mithra because his was a mysteries cult. Of course, there were many mysteries cults, and there was stuff written down about them, but nothing was written down. So they're actually admitting that the mysteries were not written down, but they were there, so there was something to them.
Yes.
But in the case of Mithra, there was a bunch of stuff written down, and there were multiple volumes of it, and yet they were destroyed. Why were they destroyed? And then there was also just a massive amount of ruins. We still dig up now and again, fortunately, but it's huge. All over Europe, there was all this Mithraic remains. And so we have this, and this is before Christianity had any prominence at all. So, to say that Mithraism copied from them is just ludicrous. This is all over the place. But this claim that the Mithra is self-generated out of a rock, and therefore there's no Virgin Mother. Well, according to the Iranian scholars and texts, I guess they're Armenian texts, Mithra there is virgin birth. His father was born of a virgin, and apparently he too was identified with his father. And so the Iranian or Persian, remember Mithra is a Persian god, and I think that perhaps the Persian scholars know more about the subject than Christian apologists.
Sure.
Mithra's father was born of a virgin who becomes pregnant from the water of the milky fountain of immortality. This is not copying Christianity. There's nothing even remotely resembling that they just took it. If anything, the copying was the other way around because it was taken from these cosmic concepts and it was turned into a real person. It was given a mundane origin as opposed to what the original was. It has to do with the dawn. It has to do with Virgo. It has to do with this lovely milky fountain of immortality. All these great cosmic concepts that have now been really kind of bastardized by being put into history and claimed that this was a historical virgin birth and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
The whole concept has actually been ruined by this. This forced anthropomorphization, this historization has actually ruined all these wonderful cosmic concepts that permeate.